making YouTube videos and kit bashing takes 68.
Perfect. What's up, YouTube? Amanda here. So I am just days away from going back to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I am super excited about it. But my friend Chris and I decided that we were going to kit bash our phones, or Datapads as they like to call it. But we filmed the entire process. So if you guys want to see how we made these, take a look. First off, I want to talk about some of the materials you may need. You're obviously going to need a phone case that fits your phone, some various bits and pieces or greeblies. Now, we use 3D printed parts with ours, but we also use some parts from these two Star Wars model kits, and honestly, you can get away with using just these for the entire project. Some various paints. We use spray paints and craft paints, some paintbrushes, primer, masking tape, super glue, and a clear coat. First up right here, we're just mapping out our pieces before we actually glue any of them down, just to make sure that everything fits. Me and Chris already had a design in mind before we even started the build, so we're just making sure everything fits before we glue anything down. Next up, we're using some 220 grit sandpaper, just sanding down those phone cases to make sure that the paint and the parts have something to adhere onto. Now that sanding is done, we need to glue on the parts that we know is going to be the same color as the phone case before we add any of our separate greeblies. Now that that's all done, it's time to prime the parts. So I use some flat gray Rust-Oleum primer just to prime everything before I airbrush any of the colors on. So right here, I'm just airbrushing the first coat. I went with that Imperial Officer green olive color, and Chris went with a very dark black, which is going to help what he's going to try to do later on in the video. And for these, I'm just using basic craft paints watered down with some distilled water so it can run through the airbrush. Then I'm using a hairdryer just to speed up the drying process. Now with my greeblies, I didn't actually airbrush them. I used a special spray paint. It's the Krylon Premium Metallic Spray Paint. This stuff is great if you're on a budget and you don't want to spend a bunch of money on like lacquer or anything like that. But if you really want something to look very chrome and shiny, this is a great option. Unfortunately, my camera ran out of memory, so it didn't capture me actually spraying the spray paint, but again, it is a fantastic spray paint. All right, now that the paint is all done, it is time to assemble. So we're just using some super glue here and some accelerator just to speed up that process. Chris also added some blue stripes just to add a little bit of custom paint to his. Now with my build, I took a lot of inspiration from the Imperial side, of course. I used some parts from Vader's chest piece. I also used some Imperial Officer rank bars. I took some parts from a Stormtrooper ab plate, a part from Vader's belt, and Chris went more with a post-war, fall of the Empire, grungy, used up look. I think both of these have a lot of character. Now it's time for weathering. So Chris is using a really cool dry brushing technique, just using a chip brush and a little bit of paint, rubbing the majority off, and then going over those raised edges, and it gives off a really cool metal metallic-like texture, and just going back and forth in different directions just to achieve that look he was going for. So now I'm getting ready to add some weathering to mine. I'm just using some oil paints watered down with some water. You don't have to use oil paints though. You can use regular craft paints watered down. I just like the look of the oil paints because it gives it a really grimy look, in my opinion, really used. So that's why I went with that. I'm just going over the parts and then wiping it down with a wet shop towel. And last but not least, I'm adding my rank bar colors, and Chris is adding his Kitbashed text. His Kitbashed text says waterfowl because he is a huge Donald Duck fan. And guys, that's it. This is how you kitbash your phones for Galaxy's Edge. This project was a lot of fun and it only took an afternoon. Now when you're done with everything, I would go ahead and clear coat everything just to make sure that none of the paint comes off and you're good to go. That's it for this video, guys. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you get an alert every time I make a new video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.